All right. Can you see my screen? Hello, can you see my screen? Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So, hello everyone. Samson Amugo. I am a software engineer and a Microsoft MVP for developers technologies category. So, in today's session, we're going to be talking about deploying a .NET API to Azure using GitHub Actions. I'm sure most of you here might have heard about GitHub Actions. So what exactly is a GitHub Action? So GitHub Action is a feature on GitHub that enables you to execute a group of commands or a command based on an event, triggering from based on an event. Maybe the event could come from making a push to your repository, or it could come from closing an issue on GitHub, or it could come from even opening an issue or leaving a comment on a pull request. So a lot of events are actually there. It's just for you to select the one you want to trigger your action. And since we're talking about deploying a web API to Azure using GitHub Actions, currently there are like 3 supported ways of uploading or deploying your application to Azure. And the 3 are the published profile. So in the published profile, basically what you do is after creating your web app service, you download the published profile and then copy the content and put it out on your GitHub repository settings as a secret. And the thing here with this process that is manual, and you risk exposing some of your credentials because it's long-lived. It's not like a short time-lived token. So it poses some security risk. Although depending on how you do it, you could mitigate some of the security factors. Then the next available option is your service principal. So in the service principal technique, what you do is that you create an application. So this application, for this application, you dedicate, authority. The application works on your behalf, so it has the authority to perform and execute some actions based on your behalf, And you still this technique also poses some security risk because you have to generate a client secret, which is a long secret that you would use to have access from your workflow to Azure. And the final one, which is the one we're going to focus on in today's session, is the OpenID Connect. In this technique, very, very secured. All you have to do is to establish trust, configure the repository you want to listen to, and the OpenID Connect protocol does all the exchange of credentials in a very secured manner. So let's look at what the flow looks like. Here is an OpenID Connect, very secured. So the first stage is we are going to focus on the cloud provider, and the cloud provider here being Azure. In the cloud provider, you're going to establish trust between your cloud provider and your workflow, and you can do this configuration from your Azure Active Directory. I will get into that soon. Then the next step is your GitHub Actions workflow. The next time your GitHub Action workflow executes, it auto-generates a token, and that token contains a list of claims. And these claims are generated specific to that workflow. And with the claim, you could use it to secure and validate your identity on your cloud provider being Azure. Then for the test stage, you could include a step in your workflow that retrieves this token from your OIDC provider, that's OpenID Connect provider on GitHub, and sends it to your cloud provider. So once your cloud provider validates that this the claims in your token are valid, it would send a short-lived token back to your workflow. And then with this short-lived access token, your GitHub action can now make your tokens to make requests to Azure, to request for resources. So let's get coding. Let's get coding. Yeah. So here I have my Azure portal opened. So the first thing I like to do is to create an application on Azure Active Directory and then establish trust between my Active Directory and my GitHub. So let me do that. I think I should zoom in. Yeah, it should be better. So I'll scroll down on this left panel. Then I'll look for app registration. I'll click on new registration. Then the user display name for this application. So let's call it GitHub. GitHub's. Let's just call it GitHub's app. Then I'll register the application. So the application has been registered successfully. Then on this left navigation panel, I'll scroll to certificates and secrets. I'll click on it, and here you can see you have 3 ways of like having access or establishing access. You can use client secrets, you can use certificates, and you can also use federated credentials. But for this, we'll be using federated credentials. And then once you click on federated credentials, you click on add credential. Then you see this drop down here. You click on it and you click on this option. GitHub Actions deploying Azure resources. So this is where you configure your workflow. So in organization should be I'm using my repository's name, by the way, my GitHub account profile name, Sam Chinedu to KY. And then for the repository, I have to create a repository on GitHub, and I don't think I've done that. github.com/ actually do. So let's call it GitOps. And then it's with public GitOps, create repository. Then I already have the API generated on my local machine. So I'll just copy this to push the code to GitHub. In case you're wondering what this application does, let me just run it. .NET run. So this is basically a GraphQL API, and I just set up the subscription service. So you get to see it. Let me just copy this command. Open it. So in this API, I made use of hot chocolates to create the GraphQL endpoint. So what this does is it just generates random dollar rates for me on a timely basis. So this is what I'm actually going to be deploying to Azure. So let me just cancel this and go back to my repository, close this, then add Git to this. So Git add what are they saying? Git commit. They're saying not a Git repository. Oh, I have to do init, sorry. So Git init, then Git add, onto add. I'm adding everything. I'm not excluding some services. That is not good. That's not the best practice. So git add everything, then git commit init. That's going to use as my commit message. And next I'll do git add origin. Oh, this wrong. Git add origin. So in case you don't know, like Windows 10 or Windows 11 has this feature that enables you to like see your clipboard. So all you have to do is press your Windows key and V simultaneously, and you see a history of the clipboard. So I just click on this. Git add origin. Git. Oh, git remote add origin. That's a mistake. Git remote add origin. Yeah. So next I'll do git push origin master. Right. Okay. So let me check my repository on GitHub, refresh. And yeah, I have it on GitHub here. Nice. So remember the name of this repository is GitHub. So I'll just copy this and then use it as my repository name on Azure Active Directory. Then entity type. So this entity type, this is where you select, this is where you configure the value that you want to use to establish trust. It could be the environment that you're pushing from your workflow. It could be the branch. But for this, I want to set it to environment. Then for environment, I'll use production. Anytime I execute a workflow that is running in production, it will trigger this application and then to send the token back to the workflow. Let me just call this, what should I call it? Testing the mic. This should do. Click on add. So now I've created this application and I've connected it to establish trust to this repository. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create my app service plan. So I like creating my services. I like creating resources inside resource groups so that it'll be easy for me to delete all my resources for that particular project at once. So for the resource group, I'll type, let's call it GitHub Actions. This is okay. Then I click on review and create. I click on create. Go to resource group. Then next, so now that I've created a resource group, I can now create my resource, my web app service here. So I'll just type web app in the search box and I'll click here and I'll click on create web app. So what am I going to use as the name of this website? So let me call it Sparky GraphQL. That is okay. Then from this configuration, this is where you set the runtime stack of your Azure Web App Service. So I'm working using the .NET 7 framework. Then I'm going to deploy a Linux environment. Then I think every other thing is okay for me. So I'll click on review plus create. I'll click on create. This will take a while, so let's be patient with that. It will take a while. This should take a while. Okay. It's still creating the resource. Okay, cool. Created. So I'll click on go to resource. Then the first thing I have to do once this web app service has been created is to grant my application access to this resource so that I can execute commands on my behalf. So I'll click on add here. I'll click on add to assignment. Then I'll click on contributor, onto assigning the contributor role. Then next, I'll click on members. Is on user group of service principal selection. So I'll click on select members. Then I'll click on, I think, oh no. Wait, let's get back the name of the application. Let me get back the exact name. Coming. So I'll go back to my Active Directory. Then I'll click on app registrations, owned. Okay, so I created GitHub's app. So I'll use that name here. So GitHub's. Yeah. So next I'll click on GitHub apps and select. Then I'll click on review plus assign, review plus assign. Then, so currently the GitHub apps has access to this Azure Web App Service. So the next step, the next thing we're going to do is to specify our workflow. So let's get right into that. So I'll go to my VS Code. Then to create your workflow, you would have to create a .github folder. And in your .github folder, you have the workflows folder. Then you cannot create any workflow based on your choice, the name of your choice. So here we're going to use cd.yaml. Yeah. So you have to make it of the YAML file extension when specifying your workflow. So let me name this workflow. Let's name it CI CD partial. Then the next step is to specify the event that will trigger this workflow to run. So we're going to be listening for the push event. And a workflow has jobs. So you can have 1, 2, multiple jobs if you want. So the next thing I'm going to do is specify the jobs. Then for the jobs, I would have steps. So so for the jobs, let's start out with the first thing. The first job we're going to have here is the build job. So this job would build out our application. And when you're creating a job, you have to like specify the environment the job would run. So for this one, we're going to be executing this job in a Linux environment. So I'll say runs on Ubuntu. I'll say the test. Then after that, a job, you have to know that a job has steps. So create steps. So steps is like a list of actions that could be executed when the job is running. So the first step, I'll call it checkout. I want to check out into the repository. So I'll name it name. I'll call it checkout into repo. Then this step would make use of an action, and the name of this action is checkout. Now we're making use of the version 2 of this action. Now, this action, this uses keyword, specifies an action that, and this action contains like a group of commands that will be executed when this step is running. And one thing you have to notice is that all you have to do is to specify. You don't have to like get into the details of how the action works. You can just reference an action and to run your workflow. So after checking out into the repository, the next step is to publish the application. I'll say publish app. Then you could also like specify the kind of .NET environment and version that you want to be available. But I'm kind of confident that the latest version of Ubuntu on the GitHub runner actually has the dependencies I need to execute my application. So that's why I'm not bothered about that. So I'll say it uses, no, for this I'll just run, I'll use the run keyword, specify the command that I want. I'll say .NET publish. So I want to publish this app in the release mode for better performance. And I want to publish it to the app folder. Then the next step is to upload. I want to upload the app as an artifact so that a different job can pull that artifact and use it for something else. So I'll say upload as artifact. Then this step will be making use of the action / upload artifact action. I'll be making use of the version 2 here. Now, this particular action requires some inputs, and I'll say width. So for it to specify the input, you have to use the width keyword, then specify the input. So next, it requires a name input. So let's call it .NET app, and it requires a path. So we're going to select the app path. So that is where it would collect the content needed to push as an artifact. So we're done with this. We're done with this step, this job. So the next job is the deployment job. Deploy. And one thing about a workflow is that you could have 2, 3, or more jobs, and all these jobs run parallel. But since we want this our second job to be dependent on this build job, that means the build job would have to execute before the deploy job runs. So we're going to make it of the needs keyword. This needs keyword means, hey, I need a build job. We're going to just specify that, hey, I need a build job to be done before the deploy job starts running. So I'll say needs the build job. So next, I'll then specify the environment. I'll say runs on Ubuntu latest. Then I'll now specify the environment. Remember, in our configuration on Azure, we selected production. So the name of the environment is production. I'll say production. Then there's a keyword here that looks a little bit different and off, but I'll explain what the keyword does. So the URL keyword will specify the deployment URL of what I'm pushing to Azure. And I'll show you where it displays it at the end of the execution of this workflow. So for this, I'll make use of the context keyword to obtain the link to the deployed application. So I'll use steps context. So steps dot deploy. There's a step I'm going to create below. I've not created it, but the idea of the step would be deploy, and then I want to get the outputs of that step. And the output I want to get is the web app URL, which I would use. Then now I can't. Okay, I also need the permission. So I have to specify the permission needed. This permission would grant this workflow access to request for the tokens that contains the claim that will be used to establish trust between the cloud provider and the workflow. So and we're going to specify the ID token. That's what we need. I'll grant it a right permission. This right permission would grant this workflow access to request for the token, access the tokens. Then next, I'll specify the steps. So the first step here would be to log in. So I want to log into Azure. And for this step, I'll be making use of Azure login action. I'm making use of the version 1 of this. And this action requires some input, which we are going to set up on the repository. So it requires the client ID, and I'll use the context to extract this. I'm yet to also define the secrets. I'll show you how to define it, but I'm going to call it client ID. Then the next one would be subscription ID, secrets dot subscription ID. I'm yet to define this secret as well. And then the final one is the tenant ID. So I would call this secrets dot tenant ID. So now this step will like log us into Azure and grant this workflow access. So after logging in, the next step would be to download artifacts, which we're going to push to Azure. To download artifacts, then we're going to use the download artifacts action version 2. And this action requires inputs, and we're going to specify the name of the app. I remember when we uploaded in the app, we used .NET app as the name of the artifact. So it's the same name here. So we're downloading it here. So .NET app. Then after doing that, did I make a mistake here? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this last step, second to the last step, we're going to like push or deploy the downloaded artifacts to Azure. So this step, I'll name it deploy to Azure. So in this step, it's going to be using the Azure web, what's the name of this thing? Okay, let me be sure. Web apps deploy action. I'm using the version 2 of it, and it requires some input. I'm going to make use of the app name. So this app name should be the name that was used here. This wacky GraphQL should be the name of the app. I'll just copy it and put that here. Then I can now specify another input package. So this is where the location of the app would be gotten from, the content of the app. So I want it to be the current location. So I'll just put the dots here. Then the final location would be, the final step rather would be to log out from Azure. So I'll say log out from Azure. Then I'll run a command, az logout. So this command will like log me out from Azure. So I'm yet to push this. Why I don't push this yet is that I want to configure these secrets. So once I push it, it will make it all the secrets to execute all these commands. So I have to create the client ID. To get that, I'll click on the overview here on my app service. And yeah. Nice. I have my subscription ID here. So this should be the client ID of this application rather. That's a mistake. Yes. So this is the client ID. This is the tenant ID, and I can get the subscription ID from here. So I'll go to my settings, click on it. I'll click on secrets and variables. I'll click on actions. Then I'll click on new repository secrets. So the first one would be client ID, which I'll copy from here. So this is my client ID. I'll copy it, I'll paste it here. I'll add the secret. Then I'll create another one. The second one I want to create is my subscription ID. Subscription ID. I'll copy it from here. I'll paste it. I'll add the secret. And the final one would be the tenant ID. I'll copy from here and input it as well. The tenant ID. I'll paste it here and click on add secret. Cool. So now we have our required secrets added to our repository for our workflow to utilize. So the next step will be to push this action, push this change to our repository. So git add, git commit, added workflow. Then I'll do git push origin master. Nice. So now that we've pushed it, we could look at the actions tab for updates in regards to what we pushed. So it's running. I'll click on added workflow here. And you can see our two jobs. We have the build job and deploy job. So we just have to wait. In case you want to like get into the details of the execution of these jobs, you could click on the build job here. I'll just click on it. And you see that it's still in the checkout step. Let's see this through. Let's watch. Do I have the message? Yeah. There's uploading the artifacts. Cool. So let's come out from here. So very soon the deploy job should start running. Yeah. So the build job was successful, but now in the deploy job. I hope this login works. Ooh, nice. Done setting Azure Cloud. So you're downloading the artifact and oh, there's an error somewhere. So let's look at the error. So they are saying Sparky GraphQL doesn't exist. Why? Sparky GraphQL doesn't exist. Let me check something. I just need okay. It's not handy. Yeah, so I'll copy this and well, let me check. This is actually the same thing. It's confusing why it's doing this. But let me just make a little adjustment and push again and see. So git add, git commit. I change name. Git push origin master. So let's click on this actions tab, and you see here that this new flow is working. It's still executing, but let me just wait for it and see why, whether there's any subtlety here. Let me check something. Let me check if that access to this repository. View my assets. Assets. Contributor. Should have access then. Okay. For some reason, I don't know if it's had to do with a caching issue, but I didn't make any reasonable change. But this time around, deployment was successful. I think this could be a bug because I didn't really change anything. I just pushed again and added a white space here. So the deployment was successful. So if I'm to click here, if I'm to click on the overview panel here and click on this website URL, it should open. It's not running. Okay, it's working now. It's working now. So let's be sure it's working properly. Create documents, apply. Then I'll paste in my query. This is my query. So I think WebSocket is not, is it available? Not sure. Okay, it's working. So you can see I'm getting the lively updates of currency exchange rates. So it's working. So that is just the general technique and method required to deploy it in the OpenID flow. Then you might be asking, isn't there a way of like performing most of these things using your terminal or the command line? Yes, there is, but for this workshop, I decided to make use of the Azure portal. There's something else. I think this didn't work as expected. But I'm coming. Production. So you can see the production, that environment I specified in the workflow, added this environment section to the home page of the repository. So if I click on production, I'll see all these things. Okay. So now the issue I had here is that I didn't specify the ID. I supposed to add an ID here. There's no ID assigned. So that is why here in this section, wait, let me open it. So that is why here there's no ID. All you can see here is deploy. But once I fix this issue now, once the workflow is completed, there should be an ID to the deployed application or resource here. So what I'm missing out here is an ID. So I'll do that by adding an ID to this place. Sorry. I'll do that by adding an ID here. I'll call it deploy. So I'll just commit this, added an ID. Then, so this ID in this step is what will be used here in this environment. So this is what generates the URL to the resource. So now I'll just push it. Git push origin master. So let's watch it run again. So you can see this one is running, added an ID, it's running. So we'll have to wait again. But this time around, once the workflow is complete, you should see a link to the resource here just below the deploy tab. The deploy job is running. Okay. So I don't know, I think this should be a bug from Azure or GitHub. I don't know what is triggering this error, but if I run this, I believe it should work. Let me just rerun the failed job. So we just have to wait. It's still giving the same error. I don't know. I don't know what's causing this, but I have a project. I have a project here that works. But anyways, let me just show you what I meant by the environment URL. So this is a project. This is basically the same project. I just copied it, duplicated it actually. If I click on the actions here, if I click on check-in, no, not this. If I click on, okay, not this. Script. Okay. Let's see. So for some reason, the link was available when I was working on this, but I don't know why it's not there now. No idea. Funny things. But this link should be here. It should just be beneath here. And from what I did here, I added a link to it. Let me be sure that I'm correct. Web app URL deploy.appuse. Yeah, I'm very much correct. But anyways, that is all for today's event. And we have our web application running, as you can see. It's deployed to Azure. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. And thank you. Hello, is anyone?
Thank you, Samson, for the information. I
Hello?
think it was clear. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sure, I can hear you.
the attendees are not having the mic access, so they will need to type the question, or if they have
Okay.
any want to have a mic access, so please drop the message. I will give you the mic access.
Okay. Someone is asking, what
Any
is the
questions?
GBRO of this for? I'm not really sure about what you mean. Sorry. Yeah, please drop your questions if you do have.
Let's give it 2 minutes for them to type the questions.
Mohammed Ahmed, you asked what is the job role of this work? Did you mean what is the job role of this work? If that is what you meant, you could actually use this for DevOps kind of work, implementing systems, continuous integration, and continuous deployment. It's literally for automation, DevOps. You could use this for, write your test and just automating things. Okay, you're curious, where else did you add the ID? Okay, James Katogo. So I added the ID. Let me show you. So this is the ID for this step. This step has an ID, and for this, hello, am I back? Yeah, I think I'm back. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you
So,
lost somewhere.
so back to the ID. So this environment, production environment, has a URL key, and this URL key will to spit out the deployment URL for this application in Azure. And you can see I have the steps, I have the deploy, I have the output, and I have the web app URL. And this deploy is from here. It's from here. But then for some reason, I don't know why it didn't spit it out automatically. I had to go to Azure to get that. I don't know if it's a caching issue, but it worked earlier on. It's not working now. Very weird. Let me just try it on one more time. Oh, let me just add this space. Blah, blah, blah. It will show you the master. So let's see. Why I look at the questions. Oh, can you use this in a combination of Octopus for CI/CD? If yes, how can you use this with Octopus for CI/CD? Like where will Octopus come into the flow? I've not used Octopus before, but let me check what that is. Octopus CI/CD. Octopus deploy. As very software delivery with repeatable deployments. So I believe this already does. This probably does the same kind of work with GitHub Actions. So you might not need to use Octopus deploy. I think. But if you're familiar with Circle CI, you could literally just use GitHub Actions and perform all the whole CI/CD workflow. I left the app name blank in VS Code. Can that affect the deployment? Did I didn't leave it blank. CI/CD for the Well, I've not tried deploying without the name. I don't know if that would abide by the specification. Probably that would work. That would work. That might work. Okay, it's warning me. It's warning me. There's no error that's been triggered. But I don't test that. I could just, test out what I could remove and what I could not remove. The required objects and key value pairs to be sure. But I'll not do that now. You have introduced 3 IDs but defined one. Which ID did I introduce? It's only deployed and introduced if I'm right. It's only this ID now. Okay, no, these ones I defined it in my secrets. See it now. I defined these 3. These are secrets. I defined it here for my settings. I went to my actions. I clicked on general and what am I doing? Sorry, I clicked on secrets, then clicked on actions. Then down below, you could see I defined it. See it? I defined 3 of them, 3 of my IDs. Then this particular one is unique for this step. This ID is unique to generate the URL. So I defined everything. Can you do a brief walk from the start? Okay, let me look at other ones. To be frank, my network. Thanks for clarifying. Okay. Okay, so someone wants me to like do a brief walk from a brief run through. So let's look at it again. So basically, this is my workflow, right? Okay, before I do that, let me look at the deployed application just to be sure. Let me know the states, actions. Yeah, this blah 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 worked. Funny enough. So look at what I was telling you. I don't know why this glitch is happening, but you can see we have the URL here, just directly below the deploy tab. Yeah. So once I click on this, I should have access to my API. So you see, it's working. So I didn't make any change, but it seems to be working now, and that is very, very weird. So with this now, if I click on the home page of my repository, you see this environment. If I click on production, there's a tab here saying a button here saying view deployment. If I click on deployment, I should see my API. So this was what I was trying to achieve before, but I don't know why it didn't work. Maybe it's a bug on GitHub. I don't know, or maybe it's my fault somewhere. So going to the run through the summary of this. So this is my workflow. I created the name of my workflow, CI/CD for Azure. Then this on key specifies the events that would trigger this workflow to be executed. Then, as I said earlier on, a job can be one, or a job can have multiple jobs inside. So for this, I have like two jobs here. Then and just also understand that jobs run in parallel. So this job can be running in parallel, and this job can be running also in parallel. But I didn't want it to be that way because I want the application to be built first. Then for this step, I have to like download the built file and use it for my deployment. So that is why I made use of this need key here. So this need key says, hey, this build job, please, I'll wait for you, finish building the application. Once you're done, I'll now execute. So in this build job, I have the runs on command, the runs on syntax. So what it does is that you define the environments that you want your application to run on. It can be Ubuntu, it can be Windows, it can be on macOS. Then a job has a list of steps. So we have different steps. So this checkout to be like, so also note that this job works, it runs in a runner. So you can host your own runner, which is called a self-hosted runner, or you could make use of a GitHub hosted runner. But for this session, I'm making use of a GitHub hosted runner. So this checkout will like check in into your repository on the runner to like clone it, have access to all the files. So that is what this step does. Now this step just builds out my .NET API and publishes it into this app folder. Now this step, what it does is that it makes use of the upload artifacts action to upload the content in this app folder into an archive, a zip file actually. Then I'm done with this job, the explanation of this job. Now for this deploy job, earlier on, this needs key was there was the build one. Hey, I'll wait for you. Once you're done, I'll execute. So that's what this job does. And it also runs on Ubuntu. Then this environment, I just explained some minutes ago what it does. It says you define the environment that you want this workflow to run in. Then the permission key here has an ID token object. And what this ID token key does is that it's used to specify permission for you to like request for your token from the OIDC provider in GitHub. Then I now get down to the steps. So the first step here is to log in. So again, using this input, the client ID. Remember, I showed you where I specified these IDs for my settings. So I have my client ID, I have my subscription ID, and I have my tenant ID. Then and after that is this step. So this is why I download the artifact that was uploaded here. I remember we used .NET name, .NET app as the name. So I'll have to use exactly the same name here in this step. Then after doing that, I will now deploy my application. I'll deploy here. Then anytime you're done using like your Azure token, it's best practice to like log out so that those for security reasons, so that maybe a third-party application or a middleware will not use that token to make unscrupulous like access to Azure. So that is just about it. I think there are no. Thank you for having me. Let me open my slide. So to connect with me, I write on my blog, swagblooms.com. I also have a Twitter account with the profile name Swagblooms and my LinkedIn, Samson Amugo, so we can connect on Twitter or LinkedIn. So thanks for having me, and I really appreciate.
Thank you, Samson, for the wonderful session. I hope
Okay.
it helped you
Someone,
guys
sorry,
to
sorry.
learn more.
I think just watch the recording. Someone is asking for a run through on the Azure, but just watch the recording. It's going to be recorded. Okay, my info. Let me see if I can copy it. Hold on. Let me see if I can copy it. Copy this link. I think you can get it from here. It's too long, but I think that would work. So thank you. Ciao.
Thank you, Samson, for the session, and looking forward to having you next sessions as well. And yeah, thank you all for joining today with us.
Yeah, thanks.
And yeah, if you don't mind, can you, like, the
Thanks,
presentation is
everyone.
shared, right?